Again, good morning, everybody. My name is John Gestel. I'm our client relations coordinator here. I'm sure I've spoken to many, if not all of you. With me on the call is Dayton O'Connor, our analyst, Rob Bernhardt, corporate counsel, and then Gary Young, one of our co-founders. We're going to give this a couple more minutes to let everyone continue to trickle in, probably just a couple more minutes since it seems to be slowing down here. Just a general reminder, if you do have live questions, please use the Q&A tab to send those questions in rather than the chat program. Q&A is a bit easier for us to monitor. We'll be first going through the submitted questions for when you signed up for the webinar, and then we'll open up the floor to live questions. We'll get through this pretty quickly. And yeah, we'll just give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get ready to go here. All right, just 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll get rolling here. Okay, let's just get started. Again, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is John Gestel. I'm our client relations coordinator here. And again, introductions, Dayton O'Connor, our analyst, Rob Bernhardt, corporate counsel, Gary Young, co-founder. We're going to start with the submitted questions. So we'll just get right into it here. First one that we have submitted is how much cash flow can you get with these investments? Pretty general question, and the answer is going to be pretty general as well. Depends on how much you buy. The price of the asset typically depends on the income it's been generating historically. It's kind of how our model works. So I would say your cash flow potential is limitless depending on how much you buy. I don't know if any of you guys have anything to add to that. Moving on here, can non-accredited investors participate? Yes, they can. The only limitation for non-accredited investors is through our private syndicates. Since those are technically securities, you do have to be accredited. You'd go through a separate accreditation to participate in those. But generally speaking, yes, anyone can purchase any asset on the site, assuming that they have the funds for it. Moving on here. How much money is the minimum you can invest on a royalty listing? Tough question. There really isn't a formal set minimum. It depends on the price of the asset. Typically on the low end, we expect assets to transact somewhere in the 5,000 to 10,000 US dollar range. But we've seen some in the 2,000 range. They're just pretty rare. So realistically speaking, expect between 5 and 10,000. Next one here, who builds the portfolio for syndicate deals? How are they structured? Rob, Gary, one of you guys want to take that one?
Yeah, I can jump in. There's really is no portfolio. We've done 3 private syndicate deals, and all those they were for a single asset for multiple people to buy a membership interest in the LLC that then purchase the rights to that asset. So there's no portfolio to bid. We raise the money a single time to buy one specific asset.
Perfect. Gary, anything to add? Perfect.
Nothing to add here.
Next one here. Do you have investors that finance their purchases? Possibly. That's not something that we deal with, and we don't provide any financing for the assets. It would be difficult just because we do have a pretty tight turnaround for payment for these assets. So getting financing together would normally breach our payment timelines. So I won't say no. It's certainly possible, but I would be surprised. Next question here. Can a royalty be transferred into a trust at a later time? Yes, they can. Rob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, no, that's correct. You know, if you purchase the rights to the royalties, you can assign them to anyone you want after the fact.
It's pretty simple too. So just reach out to us if that's something you want to do. Next question here. What's the best dollar range to consider when investing? So this is actually a pretty common question we get. And our philosophy is that there isn't really a best dollar age. It really depends on what your strategy is for investing. Because dollar age really determines, I would say, in short, risk, but it's consistency of the payments. But that being said, some of our lower dollar age assets have been some of our highest yielding ones. One of the higher profile ones being, of course, Bodak Yellow. I'm sure many of you have seen the articles surrounding that catalog. Now, since the higher dollar age implies a higher consistency of earnings, they're definitely the more sought after ones. A lot of people looking for consistency in payments, but can't really say they're best. It's because, the yield can be significant for the younger catalogs. Anyone have anything else to add to that dollar age stuff?
I think it's just a combination of dollar age and price, right? So generally, older the dollar age, the higher price you're going to end up paying. So, which is going to drive the yield down.
Perfect. Next one here. How have NFTs changed the focus of this platform? Gary, you want to take that one?
They really haven't. So the way the focus of royalty exchanges, right, is matching buyers and sellers, right? And we looked at the landscape a few months ago and realized that there was a big opportunity with NFTs for both people that own assets today and want to trade them for crypto, and for investors who have crypto and are looking for assets that pay yield in crypto. But the biggest thing is, like, our focus fundamentally is bringing investors great assets to buy, and whether those assets are in NFT format or not, that it really hasn't shifted the focus of our business.
Awesome. Next one here. What is the basis of your implied IRR calculation? By whom has it been vetted? Does the implied IRR calculation differ by genre? So kind of a multi-part question here. Our IRR calculations, those are just simple IRR calculations. You could recreate it on a regular Excel spreadsheet. It does assume a resale at the 10-year mark, which you can see on the cash flow table when you take a look at them. As far as the basis for that IRR calculation, there's actually a link on, I think, every listing that will get into the philosophy behind the IRR, how we calculate it, what goes into it, stuff like that. So it's been vetted by our analysts, but it's really just a simple IRR calculation. Dayton, Rob, Gary, I don't know if any of you guys have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't differ by genre because it doesn't really make any assumptions other than that resale at 10 years.
Right. Okay, perfect. Next one here. How do I go about this opportunity? Where to start? Well, if you're brand new to investing, I would say check out our investor guides. We've got a bunch of starting guides, intro guides, things like that. I can link them in the chat program in a little bit, just so that they're easy to access. And then watch the market and find an asset you like. Just make sure that you can obviously provide payment within our time frame. Next question here. Does the standing order allow you to pay monthly for the listings? No. In no case can you pay monthly for asset purchases with us. Payment does have to be made upfront within that 2-day window. That's consistent across any purchase on the site. How often does Royalty Exchange show revenue earnings to investors? Is it live earnings I can see? So we provide the earnings statements when we receive the distributions. So depending on the entity that's providing the royalty payments could determine how frequently you see updates. So it could be monthly, could be annually, could be quarterly, really depends. Most commonly we see entities paying on a quarterly basis, but it depends.
Yeah, and I think a key thing to keep in mind is every asset you see on Royalty Exchange, the most recent payment that has been made to the seller is what we're reflecting. Right. There isn't anything that is being held back or waiting on. It's as soon as a new statement comes out, that gets updated on the direct listing, and then if we run an auction, that'll have the most recent statement that was paid out.
Next one here. How are profits sent to the owners of NFTs? Gary, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So basically, when the royalty payments come in, we administer the payments for the assets from the NFTs, and then we look up whose wallet, the wallet address that the NFT is at, and then we convert those royalty payments to Ethereum and send them to the wallet address. Now, if it's someone new, so not the person that bought it from us, we'll need to get a W-8 or W-9 from them in order to comply with U.S. tax laws. But that's how it's done.
Great. Can I get an advance on my royalties? So I'm going to assume this is from someone who's purchased an asset with us, asking about getting an advance on the asset they've purchased. We won't provide that. We don't do an advance structure like that. I guess it's always possible we could shift that way in the future, but at the moment, that's not really something we offer. We would say you can resell them on the marketplace, and that would function similarly to an advance. I don't know, Gary, Rob, Dayton, if anyone has anything to add to that. I mean,
No, I think it's an interesting idea, but we have not done much with it.
Right. Next one here. Where do you recommend artists starting with investing? Kind of answered that earlier with our intro stuff. I would say take a look at the guides, get familiar with the marketplace, how to invest here, and just go through those steps. It shouldn't be any different from anyone else getting started. Next one here. What is the next NFT? So historically, we don't reveal assets that are in the pipeline because they're not real until they go up. So can't really answer that. I don't know, Gary, Rob, or if any of you guys have anything to add there, but I'd say stay tuned.
Yeah, just stay tuned.
Great. Next one here. What is the best way to invest, single or mixed catalogs? Dayton, or one of you guys want to take that one?
No. We can't give any investment advice. So, and everyone's risk tolerance is different. I think there's benefits to having a diversified portfolio of royalty assets, like with any other investing.
Perfect. Next one here. Do you anticipate royalty exchange getting involved in any way with NFTs vis-a-vis licensing? Oof. Gary, Rob?
I don't know that I understand the question. I think it's pretty. Let's assume that talking about from a standpoint of like putting the copyright, creating the copyright as an NFT, and then allowing folks to license it using smart contracts. I think it's really interesting, and I think that's probably where the industry is going. But we have no plans to participate in that trend as of now. It's a hard and complicated problem with lots of stakeholders.
Anyone else? Anything to add?
Right. No, that's what I would assume the question was as well, Gary. So we're on the same page there.
And if you're on and that wasn't what the question is, just type in a clarification in the Q&A and we'll answer that.
Great. Next one here. I want to know how to invest in a percentage of a royalty. All the assets on Royalty Exchange are inherently a percentage of the overall royalties, depending on what the seller's entitlement is. But as far as just a piece of one of the assets we have live, the only way you can do that is through the private syndicates, which are few and far between. Otherwise, all assets have to be purchased in their entirety.
Yep.
Next one here. How are the masters transferred over to the buyer, and how long does it take until royalties are paid out? Rob, you want to take that one? About masters?
Yeah, so if we're talking a sound recording deal, you're almost certainly not buying the actual masters themselves. You're buying a right to the royalties that are derived from the exploitation of those masters. So it's really there's no transfer of any sort of media or anything like that as far as the actual recordings themselves. It's really just the royalties.
Perfect. Next one here.
I'm sorry, John. There's a second part to that question. And it was how long does it take till royalties get paid out? And that depends on the distributors of the royalties payment schedules. So some are quarterly, some are biannually. monthly even sometimes. So it's really whatever that first payment that comes out after the auction or the direct listing, the sale is closed, then you'll receive that very first payment that comes out after that.
Perfect. Moving on here, do you analyze royalty statements to see exactly which tracks / placements are generating royalties? Dayton, you want to speak to that?
Sure. So for the short answer is yes. We receive a minimum of 3 years of historic earnings. And in the course of evaluating the pricing for this asset, we're taking a look at the distribution trends, and that entails what tracks are generating those royalties and from what sources, at a high level to the income types down to the more granular level of specific music users that income is being paid out from.
Awesome.
And you can see all that in the raw data that we provide in the listings as well.
Yep. And oftentimes we'll actually have graphs on the listing showing the top earning tracks and where those sources are coming from. So a lot of that data should be included. Next one here, I would like to understand how royalties are accounted for, especially with the quote bundled / rolled up queues. So not sure if this is in regards to how like a PRO or a publisher accounts for the royalties or how we do. Our data is based on the raw data of the earnings that come from those payors. So we rely on that information to put together our listings. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys are seeing something there.
I can speak to the second part of this question because I worked at ASCAP, so I understand the practice of bundled and rolled up queues pretty well. The PROs oftentimes for these AV productions will, in an act of administrative efficiency, create these bundled or rolled up queues, which represent all the queues that are embedded in an AV program that have the same share splits, rather than create, dozens, if not hundreds of individual queue registrations for a given TV episode or movie. So that bundled rolled up queue represents all of the queues that have that same set of entitlements across a given program.
Great. Next one here, are we paid through your website? Yes, you are, but it's a separate administration portal. It's called the Payment Hub. So once you purchase an asset, we get you set up with an account there. That's where you specify your banking information, how you'd like to get paid, everything like that. So you do get paid through us, through our accounting agreement, but it all cycles through that Payment Hub portal. Next one here, what's the lowest bid accepted for a catalog? We kind of talked about that earlier. Lowest bid, it really depends on the asset. Low end, you should expect between 5 to 10,000. Sometimes they can dip a little bit lower, but expect 5 to 10K. How can you guys help me with my royalties in AudioMac? Not sure what that is. It sounds like it came from an artist. Next one here. I'm interested in hearing a discussion of techniques used to evaluate a catalog's earnings potential based on past performance. So Dayton, I'll default to you, but general disclaimer for whoever asked that question, we cannot provide financial advice, so we can talk about the way we look at these catalogs, but we can't tell you how to value them.
Right. And just as a general disclaimer, I think you're going to hear from any financial institution, past performance is not necessarily an indicator of future results, right? That's something that we have to bear in mind with each of these listings. And I think that if you're an investor on the Royalty Exchange platform, you're probably familiar with how we're evaluating these catalogs. We're taking a look at dollar age, as Gary touched on earlier in the call. The higher the dollar age, that's generally imputing to a higher value and a higher price point because there's a greater consistency in the earnings over time based on the history. When you're taking a look at an asset, you can have certain rules of thumbs about how that asset may perform based on what you're seeing in the raw data for the listing, as well as some information that you may have about, how certain types of music are consumed based on genre. One thing I like to consider whenever I'm taking a look at an asset is, okay, what is this, artist or songwriter, publisher, where's their music coming from? If it's country, probably more driven by radio. That's going to probably for lower dollar age catalogs mean more volatility because you'll see higher payouts for radio early on and have that trickle down pretty soon thereafter as that song leaves those radio airplay cycles, versus hip hop, where you might have a longer tail of distributions because an entire catalog relating to an album is being consumed on streaming platforms as well as from other sources. Those are just a couple of factors that I think you can consider when you're taking a look at some of these assets, when you're trying to decide to invest, where that money, is likely going to be coming from.
Next one here, can you add artists' names to the list of songs/titles that are on the exchange? This is a pretty common request we get, adding artist names to the track lists. It's something we are considering, but it's, Gary, Rob, Dayton, any of you guys have any thoughts you want to put to this?
I mean, it's something we're working on. It's harder than it sounds because, with most of the assets we sell are Songwriter royalties, right? And so if a songwriter writes a song and two different artists record a version of it and play it, the songwriter's paid on both, right? And so sometimes it can be tough in a scalable and accurate way to understand which one of those artists' version of the song the songwriter is getting paid on. So that's a big thing. And the data in the music industry is getting better, but it's not always really clear. And when we look at it and we put something up on the site, right, we have quite high standards for the data that we show. So when we've done different tests of basically saying, okay, here are all the songs in a songwriter's catalog and let's match them up to an artist, there's been mistakes in different automated data sources that we've tried out. So we've hesitated until we get to a point where we feel confident that everything on there is 100% accurate.
Awesome. Next question here, catalog purchase outright. Yes, there are instances where you can buy a catalog outright, most notably through the list price on the exchange. That's the equivalent of a buy now price. That's set by the owner of that asset. So if you agree to that price, they've already agreed to it, that would be a done deal. So that would really be the only way. Next one here, is there a calendar of listings for the auction house? How many more listings will be up for auction? So we kind of touched on this earlier. We can't, advertise coming assets because they're not real until they are real. So we can't really say, hey, here's what's coming. Occasionally we'll put up a listing for like a day or two when it's ready before we open up to offers. That's not really a calendar of listings. We can't really do that. As for how many more listings will be up for auction, a lot. Expect more auctions. We will continue to do auctions.
Yeah, and John, just to expand on, it's not real until it is real. Really what that means is, each asset has its own due diligence that we have to run through to verify information that comes from the seller, to connect with the actual distributor themselves, kind of vet each asset. So we really take our time to get that done. And once we are sure that an asset is sellable, that's when it goes up on the website.
Right. Perfect. Next one here. What is the difference between the auction and secondhand? Secondhand, I assume referring to the exchange. The biggest difference is the method of sale, right? So the auction house is a formal auction. Highest bidder wins. There's no buyout price. There has to be an opening bidder, all that stuff. Whereas on the exchange, this is kind of like an open market. So assets get listed there. There doesn't have to be a buyout price. In fact, the seller is not obligated to sell if they don't want to. So the auction will be a guaranteed sale at some point, whoever the highest bidder is. Auction house, not necessarily the case. Any other differences you guys want to point to?
No.
Okay, great. Moving on here. How much leverage is being used in these deals, if any? If there is leverage, which lenders are providing it at what sort of LVs?
So we don't know, frankly. So if anyone buying royalties on our site is using leverage to do it, we don't know. So don't really have a good answer to that question.
Yeah, I would only say to that, historically, it's been difficult for artists to leverage royalties with a formal financial institution. That's one of the reasons why royalty exchange works, is because we can provide that for them.
Mhm.
So investors have asked me this in the past, like if they can leverage it for another loan, and I would say, if you do, let us know. I'd love to hear how you did it.
Yeah.
Because historically, as we understand, it's been pretty difficult. Next one here, first time investor. Once we've acquired the rights, how do we know that we are the true owner, and what docs are provided? Rob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, certainly. So really, there isn't any sort of title in a music royalty. What your proof is that you have a purchase agreement with the seller, and oftentimes that'll be the original creator, songwriter, artist, or producer, something like that. So the purchase agreement will be what you have that shows that you are the true owner. Now, royalty exchange does, as the administrator of the royalties, receive payment from the distributor and then pay them out to you. So in essence, we're a little bit of a clearinghouse for all the deals that happen on our site, so that we know who has purchased what and who's entitled to what royalties.
Awesome. Next one here, am I able to purchase just a portion of the royalties, or do I have to get the whole thing? Again, we touched on this one earlier. You do have to buy them in their entirety. The only partial purchases would be through the private syndicates. Next question here, how are royalties taxed? Rob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, they're 1099 as ordinary income. That's a separate box for royalties.
Awesome. And also, full disclaimer, we are not tax advisors. We cannot provide any sort of tax advice, all the usual stuff there. Next one, I would like to build my portfolio with royalty revenue. I need some help how I can get started. For help getting started, again, point you to our intro docs. We've got a ton of resources for investors on the site. I will link them in the chat once we get a little bit further along here, so you will be able to access those, but it's freely available on the site. So to take a look at that stuff. Next one here, don't you think NFTs add unnecessary complexity and currency risk to rights sales? Gary, Rob, one of you guys want to take this one?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think unnecessary is the word in that question that I take issue with. Is there, if we do an NFT and you buy it, there is currency risk with Ethereum, right? But it's a different type of purchase, right? It's like you want to take a position that you're bullish on music royalties, on this specific music royalty, and you are bullish on Ethereum and cryptocurrencies in general. The way we think about it is like once we pay the royalties to you in Ethereum, you can convert it into a stable coin or US dollars if you want. But yeah, no, we're bullish on crypto in general. So no, we like it. We think it's interesting.
Which I think, I guess, is not to say that that's going to be 100% of the deals that go on royalty, right? It's a different product, that's going to be alongside the standard deals that we do anyway.
Yep.
Right. Awesome. Next one here, is return guaranteed? No. As with any investment, there's inherently risk. Definitely factor in the cost for your purchase price into your return scenarios, whatever you're putting together. Nothing is guaranteed. Next one here, can you explain the different types of royalties available, writer, producer, etc.?
I'll jump in there.
Okay.
Yeah, so they all royalties, at least music royalties, derive from one of two copyrights. So you've got the musical composition, that's the songwriter's share. There'll also be a publisher most oftentimes on those, and those are for public performances. If you see an ASCAP or BMI royalty, those will kind of be carved out specifically for public performances. And then on the publishing side, there's also include an element of public performance, but also a mechanical royalty, which is for the reproduction of that song in a sound recording. And then a sync is if it gets placed if that song gets placed in a movie or TV show or something like that. So those are the two main areas you'll see on the composition side. Then on the sound recording side, really that's going to come from the vast majority of these days is just going to come from streaming. It'd be or sales. If there's a digital sale, a vinyl album. So really, you can kind of think of a stream as a little bit of a micro sale. So that's where the sound recording royalties come from. There's also a non-interactive royalty for the sound recording that happens on like Sirius XM, Pandora, places like that, where it's a digital medium that kind of acts like a radio station. So that's a little bit of a carve out on the sound recording side, but for the vast majority of things that we'll see, it's just going to be a straight up sales and streaming deal on the sound recording side.
Awesome. And for more color there, again, on the blog page for investors, we've got walkthroughs of all the different royalty types, what they are. There are cash flow tables showing how the splits work, ton of information there. So again, I'll point you there. Next one, how do you determine worth? Is it a percentage of the yield? We kind of touched on this earlier. It's a combination of a lot of different things. I don't know, Gary, Dayton, if either of you guys want to add a little bit more there, but.
I mean, it's just like anything, right? It's like your expected, how much you think this asset is going to cash flow in the years to come, and discount that back to the present and come up with a price that you'd be willing to pay to get those cash flows. We don't say, okay, this is how much this should be worth, right? We provide the market, we connect you as a buyer with sellers, and then you guys work through how much you're willing to pay for the asset.
All right. Next one here, can I resell these later? Yes, you can sell anything on Royalty Exchange that you purchased on Royalty Exchange. In fact, we will automatically relist eligible assets on the exchange on behalf of investors so that they do have some additional liquidity options there. So yes, you can resell anything. Difference between licensing and purchasing.
I guess I can answer that like in a very basic way.
Yeah.
If you're licensing something, that means someone else owns it and you are buying a license to use that. You don't actually own it, but you're paying the owner for the right to use it. And that's kind of what a royalty is. And then purchasing is really just you're buying the actual thing from the person who owns it, and then you would be the one that issues license because you're the one that owns it.
Okay. Next one here, is there a certain amount to start? Again, we've touched on that a couple times already. What threat do NFTs pose to the traditional copyright ownership structures? Wow. Gary or Rob?
I think it's still very, very early, right? But I could see a universe in which artists create musical works and create NFTs for them and handle licensing and everything else through that NFT. I think we're not even in the first inning of that. I think it's batting practice at best, right? But I think the ability to have digital scarcity and smart contract rules around licensing will reshape the music industry in the years to come. How exactly? I don't know, but I think it will.
Great. How are you paid for the royalties? Again, we've touched on this one with the payment hub. So I'd say look back in the webinar. How can we truly determine the value of a song? What are the indicators to look for? All right, so Dayton, you want to touch on this one? And again, full disclosure, we are not financial advisors. We cannot tell you how to value these assets, but for indicators, Dayton?
Right. And I think that we've covered a lot of these points in the chat already, because the same way that you can take the look at the value of a song is the same way you assess the value of a catalog. You're going to look at the dollar age. You're going to look at the sources of income from which that song is generating revenue. Bear in mind, if it's a royalty that's based on public performances, if it's based on mechanicals, if it's coming from the sound recording, those are all factors that you need to look at.
Perfect. Can you please provide an overview of how NFT auctions work? Well, largely it's the same as any of our regular auctions. The only difference being the NFT wallets that you need to have. I don't know, Gary, you want to
Yeah.
speak to that?
Yeah. So basically it's a standard auction, right? Except it's priced in Ethereum. And so when the auction ends, the winning bidder has to send us the Ethereum amount. And then, we confirm transfer, everything else. And then basically you set up an NFT wallet. We transfer you the NFT to that wallet, and then we pay you the royalties when they come in by converting them from fiat into Ethereum and send it to that wallet.
Next one here. What is the best investment right now? It's up to you. Depends on what your strategy is, what your risk tolerance is, what your pricing threshold is. So that's really up to you.
Yep.
Next one here. Our lawyer brought up a great question. Are NFTs and or royalties viewed as a security? Are there any SEC laws to be aware of? Rob, Gary, when do you guys want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. No, not in and of themselves. I think it kind of depends on what you do with them. If you bring in a bunch of different investors to invest in one common enterprise, whether it be a business or to buy a certain type of asset, then you can kind of get towards that direction. But no, not in and of themselves would they be considered a security without some other factors that would go down that road.
Cool. Next one here. Do you have to have all the startup money up front to start? I assume this is similar to the financing question we saw earlier. Yes, you do have to have the full amount for the asset you purchase sent to us within 2 business days of your purchase. So yes, you do have to have everything up front. Next one here. How do you suggest looking at last 3 years earnings to evaluate the future profitability of a royalty contract? I mean, Dayton,
I think this is pretty similar to what we talked about, right? You look at the age of the earnings, you look at the sources of the earnings, you look at the consistency between each quarterly payment, and you basically handicap that and say, okay, this is what I think the future income is going to be, and then you go from there.
Great. Last one of the submitted questions here. This is a 2-part question. One, do investors typically finance royalties or pay cash? We've talked about financing. Don't finance these. You need to have the money sent to us in a pretty tight timeline. Part 2, what are typical minimums for syndicate investments? So that really depends on the syndicate, the size of it, the share minimum, things like that.
But I mean, roughly they were like 30 grand, right?
Yeah, between 20 to 30, something like that. But it can vary depending on the size of it. So, but yeah, I should expect somewhere in that range. Okay, and that covers the submitted questions. So now we can move on to live questions. There's a bunch that have been submitted here. We'll just go from the top and go through them. First one here is an article I read stated that the 75% of the royalties on music are realized in the first 2 years, and then it declines approximately 5% per year thereafter. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that's true for a certain type of music royalty. I think song that's a big hit on the radio is going to make a ton of money while it's on the radio, and then when it goes out of, like, so this is like pop and country and genres like that, and then when it goes out of format, meaning radio stations stop playing it and they're like, this is top 40, that sort of thing, then it goes down substantially. The declines 5% per year after that. We've seen that sometimes. Sometimes the decline is steeper, sometimes it's not quite as steep, but you'll see with a hit song, it's going to make a ton of money in the first 2 years, and then it's going to drop off pretty substantially.
Yeah, and this is where the dollar age can be really valuable, is understanding where along that lifespan you may fall.
Exactly.
So you can read a lot more about that on this site too.
And just to add to that a little bit, I think this is also something important to bear in mind. You can have like the high level heuristics by how you're evaluating a catalog, but you also need to take it on an asset by asset basis. As Gary touched on, stuff that is on the radio is going to generate a significant royalty early on in its life cycle, That can vary by source as well. A lot of the performance rights organizations like ASCAP and BMI will embed bonus payments into their royalty distributions for certain radio play levels that will cause, these outsized payments early on in the life cycle, even relative to other sources of royalties, such as from labels or, digital distributors, other publishers, what have you. That being said, I lost my train of thought there. You need to look at a catalog as well. There can be other events that occur in the life cycle of a song that can cause it to increase or decrease over time, such as a track being utilized in an ad campaign. And that's going to generate a sync that's tied to that. And that may also bring some new interest into the catalog. A song being sampled can also bring some interest back to the catalog. So it's not necessarily the case that you're going to see a incremental decline on a year-by-year basis with every single catalog you're looking at.
Awesome. Yep. Next one here, given the currency risk, can you convert an NFT auction from Ethereum to US dollars going forward?
So once the NFT is minted, whoever owns that NFT is going to get paid in Ethereum. If you own it and you want to convert the Ethereum that you get paid into US dollars, that's totally up to you. But to convert, to basically undo the NFT is not possible as of now.
Right. Next one here. Do you track performance of specific transactions after the fact to see how performance may be changing over time? Yeah, we track this stuff for sure. We actually will regularly publish the ongoing asset performance site-wide. That's normally in our all access investor reports. If you're an all access member, sometimes that'll get published generally. And we normally have our overall our average ROI published on the site on the investor page. So you can always take a look at that. We do update that as these numbers continue to evolve. Next one here. What were the legal/tax documents you need from NFT owners that didn't purchase directly from the platform? W8 and another one, I missed it.
It's either a W8 or a W9. And Rob, is there anything else we need? I think that's it.
No, it's really just the tax document. So we just need to know who you are and where we should be credit or paying these taxes.
Yeah,
great. Next one here, question about something seen on the all access membership page of your website. What does a standing order mean exactly? So the standing orders, that's our automated investing function. It's one of the ways you can invest in the site. Basically, you outline the parameters that you'd be comfortable spending on a catalog as it were a blind purchase. So as we run valuations on catalogs and things go up on the exchange, we'll make offers on behalf of you based on the metrics outlined in your standing order. So if you're ever looking at an asset on the exchange and you see that the same very specific amount has been offered again and again and again, day after day, that's normally a standing order making an offer. So that's basically what it is. Anything to add there, Gary, Rob, Dayton, any color for that?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. Next one here. For private syndicates that you've previously run, what has been the minimum investment? We've touched on this. Anywhere between 20 to 30K, depending on the size, minimum share amount, all that stuff. So it can vary, but roughly that's been like that. Next one here. What fraction of your listings do you expect to be sold as NFTs in the future? And who decides to list as an NFT or as standard listing? Oh,
can't answer the fraction of listings. It's it'll depend on market forces. And then the decision to do a song or catalog as an NFT or as not is a conversation between us and the seller, the owner of the asset.
Great. Next one here. Has the Music Modernization Act passed by Congress in 2018 gone into effect yet in terms of payments distributed? How do you anticipate this changing the value of specific right types? Is it substantial or just at the margins? Great question.
So I believe some aspects of the MMA have gone into effect, and then there's some that are still being disputed in court. I haven't looked at it in a bit, but it will have a it will have a pretty big effect on certain types of assets. So, for example, if you buy royalties paid by ASCAP or BMI, it won't have a big effect because the big difference with the MMA is that it increased mechanical royalty payments, and mechanical royalty payments are really coming from a songwriter's publisher, and those will go up, but the public performance income is probably not going to be particularly affected by that.
Great. Last one here. Why might a songwriter slash artist slash producer slash manager bring their music to royalty exchange instead of the existing music funds? Have they already tried going to existing music funds? Do they believe royalty exchange investors are less sophisticated?
That's an interesting question. So, I mean, there's a couple parts to it. One, most of the music funds out there are much bigger, and so like our average deal size is about $75,000, and if you're managing a $200 million music royalty investment fund, you're not even returning that songwriter's calls or emails, right? So it's a different thing. Second thing is, even with bigger ones, right? Most of those funds take a pretty long time to get offers to songwriters, whereas we move much quicker because we've standardized everything. And so that's another reason why they'd work with us. And no, I don't think they think that royalty exchange investors are less sophisticated, because I'll be frank, some of the prices paid by a lot of these music funds seem a hell of a lot less sophisticated than the prices paid by royalty exchange investors, right? And so, but the biggest fundamental thing is, like, there's a huge difference between just going, the way that these funds generally work is songwriter goes to them, says, oh, here's what I got, I want to sell it. The fund gives that songwriter some estimate of what they think they'll pay. They get them locked into an LOI, which has exclusivity, and then they beat the hell out of the songwriter on every point of due diligence, have these really long form purchase agreements. It's just like, it's not a great seller experience to work with those funds. And they come to us instead because they want to see what the market says, right? And they fundamentally believe that, like, market competition and price discovery via that mechanism is a way to get a better deal, get an honest deal. So that's anybody have anything else to add on that?
No, I was going to touch on competition too. It's, we're an open market. It's not a one-to-one deal between an artist and a fund. Like you said, locked in exclusivity. So it's just, better odds.
Yep. Oh, this is great. Any other questions before we go for everybody on the call?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Going once, going twice. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, yeah, thank you all for coming. Hope this was helpful. This recording will be going up on the site. So if you wanted to review it, it will be going up there. If you do have other questions or want a little bit of additional clarity on anything we've talked about, feel free to reach out to us. We're very accessible, always happy to talk. And yeah, just looking forward to bringing you guys more assets. So
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
thank you all.
Bye.